Everyone, good morning. My name is Stephanie Stroll. I'm the founder of Boston Biotech Advisors and co-host of this event. I'd like to welcome everybody to our latest webinar on our series of innovations and operations in medical technology development. In this series, we're going to be examining technological advancements in medical devices, biotech, and other life sciences fields, and the operational processes that are needed to bring these advancements to market. Today, we're going to explore advancements in 3D bioprinting and additive manufacturing. Welcome.
Great. Thanks for kicking everything off, Steph. I am Rakesh Lal, founder of RX Device Consulting, and happy to be a co-host of this webinar series. The webinar series is sponsored by RX Device Consulting and Boston Biotech Advisors. At RX Device Consulting, we provide product development, regulatory compliance, and market authorization and access services to manufacturers of medical devices. We specialize in digital health, SAMD, AI, wearable technology, and additive manufacturing, and can assist companies from all the way from product conceptualization and prototyping through hardware and software product development, bench and clinical validation testing, QMS setup, regulatory submissions, all the way through to ongoing post-market activities once the product is launched. So with that, I'll pass it back to Steph to give a short overview of Boston Biotech Advisors.
Excellent. Thank you, Rakesh. At Boston Biotech Advisors, we focus on consulting and regulatory strategy for biopharma, biotech, regenerative medicine, and healthcare AI companies. We also do dabble in business development consulting, online education, startup website design, and marketing for our clients as well.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're very excited today to be joined by our panel of experts, Stefan Leonhardt and Alessandro Scandura. I'll give a quick bio of our panelists, and then we can dive right into this exciting conversation. So first, Stefan. So in 2017, Stefan co-founded Kumovis, a company specializing in 3D printing with medical-grade high-performance polymers, together with 4 colleagues. Kumovis was acquired by 3D Systems in 2022, where Stefan now serves as the Director of Medical Devices, leading the Kumovis business unit. He holds a PhD in medical engineering from the Technical University of Munich, where his focus was on the development of individual bioreactors using 3D printing. He has over a decade of experience in 3D printing of medical devices and combines technical expertise with a strategic mindset. And Alessandro also joins us. Alessandro currently serves as the CEO of MacBee, a company offering innovative AI-based digital solutions that optimize 3D bioprinting in the field of regenerative medicine. Alessandro has previously co-founded and supported several startups in the areas of drug discovery, healthy aging, AI, clinical trial optimization, VR for biological data and visualization, and POC for early diagnosis, and has worked for numerous large and medium life sciences companies, including Merck Group, Abcam, and Biotechne. He holds a PhD in biochemistry and biotechnology from the Polytechnic University of Madrid. So Alessandro and Stefan, welcome. We're so glad that both of you can join us on the webinar today.
Hey.
So yeah, excellent. So Stefan, I guess why don't we start with additive manufacturing and its role in healthcare. Of course, when we talk about additive manufacturing in healthcare, this is of course a very broad topic. So maybe to start things off, can you help us understand, what are the various technical components that go into bringing an additive manufacturing system to market so that it can have, a true clinical impact? What are the components, and they may come from various players in the ecosystem. So obviously, Kumovis and 3D Systems, you market a 3D printer, but there may be other aspects that are required, example, software and imaging modalities and so forth. So maybe if you could just get us started by helping us understand what are the different components that are involved in a true clinical solution.
Sure. Yeah, as you mentioned already, the 3D printer is actually just one piece of the full workflow. So I would split it up in like non-patient specific devices and patient specific devices. as the workflow is a little bit different. For patient-specific devices, for us, normally it starts with a software step. So we need a segmentation software to segment based on a DICOM data set, like, for example, a defect of a skull or of bone. After the segmentation step, we need software for the implant design. There are different softwares out there that can be used for that step. And after that step, we have kind of our implant that we want to, or the medical device that we want to print. So obviously now you need a slicing solution that mostly is linked to your printer. There are some open source slicing softwares out there, but mostly, yeah, it's dedicated to the specific printing solution. And then there's a big chunk of post-processing. So you have to remove support structures, you need surface treatment. So there again, it's depending on a little bit on the patient-specific or non-patient-specific side. So in patient-specific development or patient-specific devices, we normally try to have it compact, easy, so table, desk, or bench top kind of post-processing stations for removal of the support structures. When we speak about volume manufacturing or stock parts, we often have a post-machining, so CNC machining step for a thread tabbing or something like that. So yeah, as you see, the printer actually is just the one puzzle piece. And that's only just the technology side of things. So besides that, you also have to develop your QMS system around it, process development, V&V parts, tech file. So there's a bunch of things you actually have to do to bring something to market. So as a sum rule, I would say like 2 to 3 years you can easily calculate to bring a device to market, especially if you use a new technology. Yeah, so that's kind of a thumb rule for us.
Yeah, fantastic. So excellent overview of the entire ecosystem, really. So to dive a little bit deeper on that and understand Kumovis's role and 3D Systems' role, where does Kumovis and 3D Systems sit? Obviously, Kumovis manufactures the 3D printer, but obviously 3D Systems also has a wide repertoire of products that are on the market as well. So can you tell us a little bit about in what aspects of these components do you have your own solution, and in what aspects do you rely on partnerships with other companies in the ecosystem, and how do those sort of play out?
Sure. I think that's also going a little bit in the direction why the acquisition of Kumovis by 3D System was a perfect match. At Kumovis, we initially developed the hardware and the printing process, but we already pretty early also recognized we need software, and where we actually were using 3D System software, so D2P for segmentation, freeform for implant design pretty early. So there was kind of a perfect match with 3D Systems, what of course made the acquisition a little bit easier. But yeah, one of the beauty is now that we actually can offer an end-to-end workflow out of one group. So we have from segmentation software, everything I would say up to the printing step. Especially on post-processing, we are working with partners and sometimes on the material side. So in our case, as I said, segmentation, we use internal software, implant design, we use internal software, printer slicing software we have internally. So we can make the workflow as easy as possible for our partners and customers. Materials, we're normally, especially on the high performance polymer side, work with partners like Invibio or Evonik, who are some of the major PEEK manufacturers. And then on the post-processing, obviously as well. So we have a post CNC machining step. We're not developing CNC machines. So there we're obviously partnering with manufacturers that have that already on the market.
I see. Very cool. So on the front end of the whole workflow, you mentioned about the modeling software to design the implants, D2P and so forth to I guess to load the DICOM images and do the segmentation aspects of things. So the idea is that you would load radiology images, CT scans, typically. These are then presented to a clinician or to someone who does the segmentation of the defect that the product is going to address, and then that goes into another software application where you design an implant to fix the defect, the void, for example. For example, in the case of a cranioplasty, you may have a section of the skull that has been removed due to trauma or so forth. You have these modeling software platforms that 3D Systems develops. Can you talk a little bit about that technology itself, that software platform? How do you see it? How do you see it, this technology evolving over time? And I'm coming from the perspective of the leveraging AI. AI is the big buzzword. We can't have a conversation these days without mentioning AI. How do you see artificial intelligence kind of coming into the play and driving the development of those types of software platforms?
Yeah, sure. So over the years, I saw it quite evolving, and it's still tricky to say what is actually AI, when is it just automated? So that's for me something tricky
Yes.
to really make a difference. But yeah, the overall idea is to have it as robust as possible and as easy as possible. And I saw quite some development and involvement on the segmentation side. So if you look at our software D2P, it's really meanwhile super easy based on all the software advancements that we have in that software. So I would actually say, even if you're not a professional, to segment, for example, a skull based on the presets, what you have there is doable within a couple of minutes and without any experience. So I think that is where I really see the development in the software, that it must be easy, because especially if you
Yes.
think on point of care setups, startups, newer companies, that not everyone is an expert in these types of software. So it must be easy. And for me personally, a little bit the role model is the dental world, as chairside manufacturing is made over couple of years as easy as possible, and that's where I see we have to go as well with implants, or what is my vision here. And yeah, definitely AI is one of the tools that we have to use here, and in segmentation that already works perfectly fine. On the implant design side, I think internally we are in between right now. So we have automation steps, that we have a preset workflow that can be kind of guided. I would not call that fully AI yet. It's more automation and scripting. But on the side, yes, we see also there a lot of development in automated, for example, cranial implant design softwares that, based on a segmented defect, automatically make your implant or the implant design. Of course, you have then to there are some specialities around, like it must be have some design features dedicated to one technology, so you have to do some tweaking here. But yeah, I see a lot of progress here as well. And yeah, the dream would be really from segment or from DICOM to the printable device, fully automated, with a few clicks. That's kind of where I hope the journey goes in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and fantastic direction. And I love the analogy with the dental world. I've actually worked previously at a company doing, dental crowns, design of dental virtual scanning and design of crowns and so forth. So, and this was like maybe 15 years ago. So I think that is a great field from which to draw inspiration. Of course, and they've had a ton of advancements in that space as well. And love that you guys are driving forward with that. And I see the vision of, you take a DICOM images, one button press, you get an implant design. That I know it never works out that way, but that's of course a fantastic goal to have, and love that 3D Systems is headed in that direction. Um, maybe to kind of switch gears a little bit. So we talked about the technology, about the software modeling, the leveraging AI. We've talked about musculoskeletal disorders. When I think of additive manufacturing in healthcare, typically, the first thing that comes to mind is musculoskeletal interventions, and primarily, skeletal injuries due to trauma, for example, or maybe some congenital pathologies that require patient-specific devices. Is this a fair characterization of where additive manufacturing is today in terms of its application to healthcare? Or are there other spaces that you see additive manufacturing having an impact? And what about in the future? What are some of the bleeding edge spaces where additive manufacturing can, maybe 5 years from today, have an impact?
Yeah, again, I would split up in different buckets, and you can then even split it up in different technologies. So each technology, in my eyes, have this dedicated area where it really makes sense. So overall, I would say patient-specific, that's one of the, or yeah, patient-specific medical devices is the big overall area that where 3D printing makes a lot of sense. In stock market, I would say as well, we always have to think about adding clinical benefit while reducing costs. So that's a little bit the mantra overall. We don't want to only reduce costs, we want to add clinical benefits like ladder structures for bone ingrowth. Yeah, that's just as one example. But yeah, then you can break it down into the different technologies. So you have nylon printing for patient-specific cutting guides. You have metal printing, and I mean, metal printing is, I would say, right now the gold standard in spine. We see it in large joints, in joints. Peak printing with high-performance polymers is still new, and we will definitely bring it also into spine, but also it's right now pretty strong in CMF applications. So that's a sweet spot right now. You have resin printing very strong in the dental area. So there's really for each application, I think a targeted application set of, let's say, 10 to 15 applications that really make sense with that dedicated technology. And I think there we have to focus on and make these technologies super easy in the execution process. So that's how I would break it down. But I don't see a specific region where we don't have a benefit from 3D printing. You only have to choose wisely what technology you actually are using for what. So that's always a little bit my thinking, that we have to understand what a technology, where the limitations are, what it can be used for, where it really has a clinical benefit, and then focus on these types of applications.
Yeah, fantastic. I think the need is there definitely, and like you said, I think it's all about choosing the right technology for the specific need. It's always, and in healthcare in general, I find that that's the right approach. You start with the problem and you figure out what is the technology, and not the other way around. You never come with a technology that's looking for a problem. You always have to start from the clinical benefit that you bring. So fantastic. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of the implants that are made with the Kumovis printer today that you actually have on the market. I know we talked about the cranial implant. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what is on the market today, and what kinds of other implants that you see coming onto the market from 3D Systems and Kumovis?
Sure. So yeah, initially we started only with the hardware. So the printer after the acquisition is now named EXT220 So that's a printing platform for our high performance polymers, which runs with a broad range of different materials. So we have an open material platform. So obviously PEEK is our go-to material at the beginning. But we're more and more going also into modified PEEK grades. That's one of the beauties about extrusion technology. You can add HA, you can add BCP, carbon fiber to modify your materials. And we also go into bioresorbable polymers a lot. So we see quite some interest in that as well. So that's why we see our platform initially is just like, yeah, you can print implants, medical devices, trials, instruments with that platform in an open material way. We started then obviously to focus on specific implants and started in CMF. So our first application or product that we brought to market was our cranial implant, where we have a 510K for the US market. That was achieved last year, was the world's first 3D printed PEEK cranial implant. And on the side, we have had also traction in Europe, bringing the same product to the point of care. I guess we will touch that later a little bit in detail, but based on the regulatory roadmaps that we have available in Europe, we could have some traction here already. Right now, we are working on further CMF applications like onlays, mid-face onlays, chin, cheek, mandibular, cygoma, these types of applications. We actually also start here again with a point of care application in Europe. So I hope we have in the next month news to come for the first surgery here with one of our partners in Europe.
Wow.
And then in end of the year, we are targeting for like an orbital floor implant, also CMF application. So that's kind of a little bit our CMF roadmap where we see the application makes sense. And obviously then besides that, the spine is for us a big topic. So we're working on several spine projects, but also foot wedges, which are similar to spine cages, I would say. So applications where we want to replace bone and use our advantages like an enhanced peak rate and add porosity to the implants. So I would say that's kind of right now the focus we are having. But yeah, 510(k) cleared, only the cranial implants. So
only the cranial implants. Very cool. And just maybe so everyone is on the same page, can you explain what is CMF? What is the acronym? And
craniomaxillofacial.
Craniomaxillofacial,
Yeah.
and the various bones you were mentioning, the zygoma, the orbital floor, all of those are part of various
Yeah.
aspects of the craniofacial system. And but your currently only cleared device in the US is a cranial implant, so these are typically implants for, like, if someone has a trauma and they have a big, essentially a hole in their skull. This is an implant that is designed to specifically fill that void and provide the skeletal structure for the cranial bones, right? Is that a fair discussion? Fair description? Yeah, excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. So you mentioned some really interesting things there. Currently the FDA cleared device is made from PEEK, but I know you did mention you're working on some additional variants of PEEK, where you have other additives that are in there, and you also mentioned bioresorbable materials, which is a fascinating topic on its own. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about why did you select PEEK as the very first starting point? And maybe talk a little bit about these other materials and what do you see as sort of the time horizon, both from 3D Systems as well as maybe even, competitors that might be working on this. When do you see those types of devices, especially the bioresorbable devices, coming onto the market?
Yeah, sure. Let's start quickly with PEEK.
Yeah.
So PEEK was always our go-to material at the beginning. PEEK has a long history, track record in medical devices. It's on the market for several years. It's well established. Surgeons know PEEK, and we know it's biocompatible. It's used in CMF and spine for several years. So there's I would say, trust into PEEK. It has advantages, it has some drawbacks, but you can actually with 3D printing, challenge these drawbacks and overcome them. Advantages for us are like the mechanical properties of PEEK are close to the human bone. We have a radiotranslucent material. It's biocompatible with a long track record. It's a thermoplastic material. And about thermoplastics, I love that you can modify them. So it's pretty easy to add fillers like HA, hydroxyapatite, BCP, bifacial calcium phosphate, or carbon fibers. So you can modify pretty easy and all runs on the same platform. But yeah, we were always working with PEEK already during our studies. That's why we started with that material. Thinking was a little bit, we bring a new technology to the market, a new manufacturing process. So let's stay with one change. Don't change manufacturing process and add a new material. So that's why we started with that, and say we take an application that is already in PEEK on the market and we change the manufacturing process. So the way how we do it. So that's why we came up with PEEK and the cranial implant. One of the topics that are always discussed with PEEK is obviously the osseointegration. So how do cells like that material? PEEK is bioinert, so it's biocompatible, but it's bioinert. And if you can compare it to titanium, that's a clear drawback here. However, if I mentioned this modification of PEEK and by adding HA or BCP, we can overcome that challenge. There is a lot of machined HAP cages, for example, already FDA cleared on the market, not 3D printed yet, but they are machined. We use the same material. So that's how we, for example, try to enter more and more into the spine market.
Wow, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. So potentially 3D printing directly peak implant with HA to ensure osseointegration. That directly
Exactly.
3D printing it.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic technology. Once you can't wait for you guys to bring that to market. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what you can do with that. And then, yeah, you touched bioresorbable polymers. We
Yeah.
need some tweaks around the hardware itself, as they are operating in a very different temperature range.
Of course. Yeah.
But with some tweaks, it's possible here. And yeah, we see a lot of interest in different applications here. And also there are already 510K cleared 3D printed bioresorbable applications on the market. You just have to search a little bit for them. So it's not extremely new, but yeah, I guess we are now at this stage where it makes where also the visibility or let's call it the market is now ready for it. So we see more and more interest in that, and yeah, there are dedicated applications where it really makes sense to use bioresorbable polymers 3D printed. So it's still early stage for us, but it will come.
Amazing, amazing. So maybe switching gears a little bit again, and of course, given what I do in terms of regulatory submissions, so I did want to ask, you did mention that the cranial implant is FDA cleared. I did want to ask, how was the regulatory authorization process with FDA? How did it compare to CE mark and other authorizations you've received with the technology?
So it was a long journey. So
I'm sure.
it started pre-acquisition already. So we were working with several consultants, had pre-subs with the FDA, and got a good feeling at the beginning what we actually have to do. But the journey was quite long. So if you look at the biocomp side, it's a new manufacturing process. You're remelting the material. So we had to redo a full biocomp assessment on parts that are representing a final finished device. So that was quite some investment from our side, of course, and also to ensure that we are not bringing in any contamination and any foreign particles during the printing process. So that is a combination out about between the hardware itself, which materials you're using for the hardware, the printing process, that you're not harming the material. And then, of course, a challenge is you have a patient-specific device. So to develop a design envelope and do testing on worst-case parts, the printing parameters that you use for these worst-case parts, also there went quite some time into having the right strategy set up for all that type of testing. Our biggest challenge in the end was chemical characterization. So that was one of our biggest topics, actually, to develop a new protocol for this 3D printed device that were pleasing in the end the ask we got from the FDA on the sensitivity of the testing method. So that took us quite some time. But besides that, after we solved that problem, it was then quite smooth, I would say. Of course, challenging, tough questions, and obviously questions are all fine. I mean, patient safety is the highest thing we have to ensure. And the questions also have to say were fair, well thought through, and if you have the right strategy in the end, you can go through. However, it took us also, I would say, overall 3-ish years to get that clearance.
Wow. That's certainly quite a journey, but as you said, I did want to reiterate that these are not just implants that are or devices that are used in surgery. They are permanently implanted into a patient. So absolutely, patient safety is critical, and biocompatibility, ensuring long-term biocompatibility is extremely critical, as is, all of the other testing you mentioned in terms of, I'm sure, mechanical strength would have been critical. You don't want these things to degrade over time, and so forth. And even just sterilization, I'm sure, is an issue that FDA would have probably raised. Maybe that was easy to solve with some simple testing, but and peak is is known to be very easily sterilizable. But yeah, so great that you were able to overcome all of those challenges. I know FDA can definitely ask some tough questions on this front.
They can.
But maybe diving a little bit deeper into some of the FDA side of things. I know that in the last couple of years, FDA has released some guidance documents and white papers around additive manufacturing, and you touched about point of care, which is where I think really is the big innovation in this type of technology, bringing the manufacturing to the point of care, so you can react. Clinicians, surgeons can react quickly to any trauma scenarios. You don't have to wait for several days for a patient-specific implant to show up. So tremendous opportunity there. And FDA does have some guidance documents around what they call, I think, the medical device production systems. Does your 3D systems, the printer, fall into this category, or is this a discussion that you had with FDA, or is it a direction that you're headed in?
So we're absolutely looking at it. Point of care is very interesting, and we are absolutely looking into it. And we are, I would say, in Europe a little bit ahead compared to the US due to the regulatory possibilities we have here. I think in the US, yeah, medical device production system will be coming at some point, but it still takes some time and considerations how to really ensure everything is qualified, everything goes the way it should go. Yeah, I think we can use a little bit the experience we are doing in Europe and use that as a kind of playbook. In Europe, under the MDR, you have one specific article. It's the Article 5.5, which is describing how point of care manufacturing can happen. And that's what we're actually already doing in Europe. So we have more than, I would say, 9-10 installations in Europe at hospitals as of today. We have done more than 80 surgeries of cranial implants already in Europe, following this Article 5.5 with our partner hospitals here, and also the second product, so the mid-phase onlays, will be following that approach. Where we hopefully have the first surgery soonish. So it's doable. We also, of course, are together with our partners looking at the performance of the implants, tracking the outcomes. Really, surgeons are super happy so far. Outcome is really good. So point of care has quite some advantages for specific applications. And I'm pretty sure it will also happen in the US, but it still takes some more time. But yeah, we're always interested in discussing with everyone who's interested on that. Also, of course, in collaboration or in discussions with the FDA. I mean, there are guidance papers you mentioned, you can provide feedback. So I only can advise everyone who is into that, provide that feedback. And I hope we will see point of care printing in the US as well pretty soon.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and I think it is definitely an active area of regulatory research. I don't think FDA even really understands how to regulate this. I know, they have not, particularly with the medical device production system, this is just in a white paper, so it's a very early stage
Exactly.
phase that they're in. It is going to take some time, as you said, for them to get comfortable with the notion of manufacturing permanently implantable devices in a hospital. But it's amazing to hear you say that is on the horizon. Well, I can't wait for that to arrive. That'll be a tremendous innovation for healthcare in general.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Stefan. This was a fantastic conversation about additive manufacturing and its impact, its true clinical impact in the healthcare space. Thank you really for your expertise, and it's fantastic to see how far Comovis and 3D Systems has come in such a short time. I remember you guys just came onto the horizon, a few years ago, and it's fantastic to see how far you guys have come with this. So kudos to you, and thank you for the wonderful conversation.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so with that, Steph, I will pass this on to you to discuss 3D bioprinting and in tissue regeneration applications with Alessandro.
Excellent. Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to turn to the CEO of MACB, Dr. Alessandro Scandura. So artificial intelligence is currently being increasingly integrated into 3D bioprinting and tissue engineering. How is MacBee leveraging AI to optimize a lot of the processes?
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation and allow me to present a bit what we are doing at MacBee. And so difference with Stefan, maybe we are quite far from clinical application, but more near for research use only, so academic lab. So going straight forward to the point, the area where we are focusing 3D bioprinting improvement are, first of all, trajectory optimization. One of the fundamental issues in bioprinting is optimizing the printing trajectory. What we are doing is including AI-driven models that generate the best printing strategy, but take in consideration material and geometries at the same time. So refining the movement of the print head to ensure precise material deposition while minimizing errors such as over-deposition, overlapping, or structural instability. Because indeed we have to remember that the bioprinting is evolving during the time. The second part is bioink characterization. Indeed, the bioink, what we are seeing has an important rule in bioprinting. And what we are seeing also is that many laboratories develop their own bioinks tailored for specific application. However, each bioink has a unique rheological properties that significantly impact the printing process. And so in our approach, we integrate these properties, so rheological characterization, into the printing workflow. So ensuring optimal extrusion parameters and scaffold formation according to the rheological characterization of the bioink. And the last one that is the most challenging, but probably the most important, is real-time process monitoring. So what you can see that traditional bioprinting still relies heavily on trial and error, lacking digital tools necessary for standardization. And so what we are developing is an AI-powered monitoring system that continuously analyzes images and data capturing during the printing process, allowing for real-time adjustment and quality control. So these are the three main areas where we are working at the moment.
Excellent. And with the adaptability of the bioprinting software across various printing technologies, is there a specific method of 3D bioprinting that the software works best with, or is it optimal for all of them?
So from the beginning, no, we thought that at MacBee we have to design our software completely agnostic, so meaning it can be integrated in any bioprinter. What we are seeing at the moment in many laboratories is that one of the biggest limitations in existing 3D bioprinting software is that most solutions originate from traditional printing industry. So surface structure are prioritized over an internal architecture. However, biological tissues, the external structure is merely a consequence of a highly integrated internal physiological organization, which involves cellular spatial distribution, precise cellular spatial distribution. So in order to overcome this challenge, what we immediately have decided to do is bring together two essential components in the software: CAD-based structural design and CAM-driven machine execution in the same software. So through the platform allows user to define complex biological multi-material architecture while ensuring precise reproducibility manufacturing without requiring any programming knowledge. Indeed, still a lot of software solution requires some programming knowledge in order to interact with it.
Excellent, thank you. And so for almost a decade, there's been issues with precision in bioprinting, which is why I'm really happy that companies like yours are, integrating new solutions to combat that issue. There's also been issues, like we've mentioned, with adaptability to produce complex vascular tissue structures, which is the key challenge that needs to be fixed before we can produce larger organs, for example, in organ tissue engineering. How can your technology help solve those challenges specifically?
Yeah, so I'm a bit skeptical to think about in a future where really we will able to generate a complete organ. I think we'll be able to generate the substituting part of organs. But considering that vascularization was one of the main key areas that we're moving forward from the beginning. And we work introducing an advanced methodology to combine multi-material bioprinting that optimize both printing path planning, that is the most important thing at the moment, and material deposition. Indeed, as I said before, one of the biggest hurdles in bioprinting is ensuring that different tissues layer are faithfully reproduced, not just in composition, but also in spatial distribution and after in function. So the approach that we are using is control layer by layer, material deposition and placement by generating optimizing print path that account for material behavior, ensuring that extrusion and deposition remain precise. A key achievement of our approach is the successful bioprinting of concentric cylinders that closely mimic the composition of natural blood vessel, also changing diameter along the structure. And it is one of our technology or methodology, more precise, is that we already patented.
Excellent. Would you like to discuss some of your current projects that you've been currently working on at MacB a little bit?
Yeah. So what at least one of the key issues that we saw in academic lab in the last years was, as I mentioned to you before, the needs to better standardize the printing process, specifically in vitro models generation. And the other part is the necessity to better characterize the bioink and use this knowledge and translate this knowledge entirely in the bioprinting process. So through our collaboration, because we were quite lucky and we are collaborating with many different academic groups globally distributed. So we are expanding our capability in the characterization of rheological bioinks, specific ones, with several partners to ensure that the material behave correctly during the printing process. And specifically, we are quite interested more in drug discovery, so in the development in vitro models that mimic, in this case, chronic skin wounds. And these models at the moment are designed to replicate the regular morphology of wound beds and for better pro-inflammatory factor and immunity response characterization during the healing process. Not only, so a big part, we work extensively in, as I mentioned before, regenerative medicine and regenerative patches, but also we are working in other areas, as I mentioned before, in vitro drug discovery and specifically in spheroids, cardiac spheroids, cells model. And another one a bit far away is synthetic cornea. We have a couple of projects in this area.
Excellent. Is that one of your collaborations that you did with Bioprinting for healing for the patch?
Bioprinting
porosity and the internal structure characterization?
Yeah, he is one of them. Indeed, we worked in two different projects. This one, Bioprinting for healing, and the other one, Force Repair, European project. In the first one, what we have developed that I think is a good achievement is the capability to develop a non-planar layer according with the structural conformation of the wound that is patient specific. And at the same time, also what we have involved from the beginning is not only use AI model to better design the printing pathway according with the shape of the wounds, but also we can make a biosimulation because this material that will be printed inside the wounds will be subject to specific mechanical stresses for the movement of the patient. And so we are able to simulate this potential stress that the patches will be subject.
Excellent. Switching gears a little bit, I know you're mostly in the research arena, but in the context of personalized medicine, how does the MacB platform handle patient-specific data to create customized tissue constructs, and what measures are in place to ensure data security and privacy?
Yeah, no, it is. So as I'm connecting a bit with the answer that I gave you before, so in this context, the second project that we move forward is a European project is a Force Repair. We implemented digital twins to simulate potential shape and structure of tissue construct that will be implanted into a wound for patients, specific patient. And this approach, we consider the biophysical characteristic of the tissue, as well as the mechanical stress forces that the tissue may be exposing during the healing process. And from that perspective, this is a very sensitive topic. And Stefan, I think is very interested in this area for clinical application. So in this case, we have patient-specific data for simulation. In this case, we take great care to ensure that all data is stored securely in cloud services in full compliance with GDPR guidelines. And in addition, what we're doing also is strong encryption protocols, work a lot in data anonymization. And this is for data security, but also for run our AI models, is generation of synthetic data that can help to expand the range of simulation optimization of our platform for personalized medicine.
Excellent. Thank you. Switching gears a little bit again. Looking ahead, what advancements do you foresee in the convergence of AI and 3D bioprinting, and how are you positioning your company to lead this evolving landscape?
Yeah. So if you, at least in our opinion, if you look in the future, what we see two critical advancements for AI and 3D bioprinting, specifically for clinical translation. The first one, I already mentioned before, is a personalization of the bioprinting process. And the other one, more for clinical application, is scaling up production for patient-specific implants. So in the future, one scenario is where AI-driven solution will enable more personalized design, optimizing the bioprinting process to produce patient-specific implants. And more important, maybe also in vitro models that closer replicate the real biological condition, allow to perform in vitro drug testing and reduce, the clinical phase time. So what we are doing at McBuy is position ourselves in this area, using a bit the approach of quality by design. So in 3D bioprinting, what does it mean? Not only optimize the quality of the product during the manufacturing, but from the beginning, the R&D stages. And one component in order to achieve this main goal is focusing, that is very important, in 4D printing. So taking consideration also time as a features in the evolution of the final scaffold that will be printed. And so incorporating time as a dimension, we can ensure that printing structure not only replicate the biological property of tissue, but also evolve over time. And so this is important because responding environmental changes of stimuli that can be patient dependent or during effect of a specific drugs.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question that was brought up with Stefan a little bit, but I was wondering if you could just discuss a little bit what your experience was like with the regulatory side of things as well, being a software rather than a medical product.
So as a software, if you keep your influence area in research use only, regulation is a little bit softer, we can say. So we were not constraining to strict regulation. What's happened that, as Stefan mentioned before, my opinion, I think 3D bioprinting will be a technology that sooner or later will be integrated completely in the workflow of regenerative implant and in vitro model, 3D advanced cellular model for in vitro drug screening. It's not only in vitro, because if you have a complex advanced cellular model, we are between in vitro and in vivo. And as soon as we enter in this area, we need to comply to straight certification. But again, also mentioned before, Rakesh, FDA still is at the beginning. It's not very clear what is the right path or path. And so we in simple words, what we are trying to do is we are focusing academia, but we are not forgetting to define the path of validation that we need for in vitro models and regenerative implant.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that insight. So with that said, I would like to thank you all for joining us, Stefan and Alessandro. This has been an absolutely fascinating discussion, and I hope that our audience has learned a lot about the latest developments in additive manufacturing and 3D bioprinting. I would like to leave it up to the audience at this point to ask any questions, if you could please, in the chat box. Oh, looks like we've already got some here. I'll leave it open for a couple minutes here.
Yeah, and maybe Steph, if I can just kick things off with a question I have for both Alessandro and Stefan. So Alessandro, some fantastic work that you guys are doing. Obviously, 3D Systems and Comovis has medical devices that are 3D printed with their systems. And as Stefan was mentioning, they have a lot of biocompatibility testing that has to be done to demonstrate to FDA. Do you guys see any potential collaboration where maybe the McBee software can be used to develop in vitro models that 3D Systems can then leverage to do biocomp testing? I know this is a little bit far-fetched, but curious to see if you see that as a something that could actually materialize.
I think it's in the end up to the FDA if they accept it. So I would love to see something like that. As I also was during my PhD studies working on small bioreactors where you actually could do on a table, your personal desk, a cytotox test, just as an example. But in the end, yeah, question is if it's accepted or that's the major thing. I would love to reduce the effort for biocom testing, especially like if you go into animal testing, we don't have to kill all the animals. There's a lot to gain if we have accepted better tests, yes.
Yeah, I'm agree with Stefan that FDA at the end impose what we can include or not. What we are seeing, and I don't know, maybe we can discuss later that several other companies that are generating regenerative implant, so they are struggling a bit in order, because when you generate an implant that maybe have a biological component or use biological bioink, the generation of precise geometry and structure are not so easy from a software point of view. And so here is the merging point that I see, not from the in vitro model, but more for software that support and facilitate the generation of complex scaffold that include the biological material. Yeah, this is and that need to be established from the beginning before to arrive in front of FDA, because if you do everything without do before and you present to FDA say maybe approve this, but it's not included. So
Yep, wonderful. Yeah, so it could happen, but there's a lot of steps to go through to prove the effectiveness of the in vitro testing and that it's equivalent to, say, animal testing or other standard biocom testings.
Okay, we do have one question that just came in. Just 1 minute. As a patent attorney in Europe, I wonder how you could view the barriers to market in this sector in terms of the balance of know-how and other IP versus regulatory barriers. Does the lack of a medical device equivalent to a SPC factor in the patent activity in this sector? I'm not sure who this would be addressed to. Maybe Rakesh, if you have some insights. This is from Jerry Bretherton.
Yeah. Hey, Jerry. Jerry is actually an old former colleague that I know. Maybe so. What barriers in terms of balance of know-how and other IP versus regulatory barriers? Does the lack of a medical device equivalent to an SPC? So I'm not sure what you're referring to as an SPC factor here, Jerry. Maybe you can clarify what you mean by that.
Hi, Rakesh.
Good to see you again.
I'm a chemist by background, and I've done quite a lot of materials polymer work for an implant company, so I find this sector quite interesting. Hence, I joined the talk. I guess the question was, so supplementary protection certificate is an SPC, and it's effectively a means of extending a term of protection for a product that's been marketed, a medical treatment product like a drug that's been marketed. And it's supposed to be in place to compensate patent applicants in the medical field for very long regulatory delays. Now, these can be up to 10 years for a new drug, for example. And I guess my question was directed to yourself, Rakesh, and Stefan, maybe, in terms of the regulatory delays that you mentioned as being a little bit more modest, but still significant, of being 2 or 3 years. If you're doing 3D printing for soft tissues and then actually trying to grow parts or all of organs, or valve leaflets, that kind of thing, the regulatory delays are going to start to become much longer and more actual medicines, but you're not getting any for that. And I guess the question from my profession would be, is that actually dampening and reducing the amount of patent activity and innovation that might otherwise be taking place?
Got it. So if I understand, Jerry, you're saying that when a company files a patent, there's a limited time frame, usually 20 years or so, that you have coverage of that patent. But one of the challenges is that these regulatory clearances can take maybe half of that, or maybe even more than half of that. And so now you've got a scenario where your patent is kind of going to expire by the time you're able to bring this to market, so that everyone else can copy you. You've done all this work to bring something to market, and now your patent protection is close to expiring, and others can copy you. And is this actually reducing innovation? I can certainly say from the hard tissue, and maybe Stefan can share his thoughts on it. Those regulatory challenges, Kumovis and 3D System, I think that was a very innovative product, totally different manufacturing approach, and that's why I think it took quite a long time to demonstrate to FDA that this is safe and effective. Other implants do tend to go through faster. The biggest hurdle I've seen is typically biocomp, as Stefan was mentioning. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The soft tissue side of things, for which I don't believe there's anything on the market today, that is a whole different ballgame. I think FDA is still trying to figure out how that is going to work, and what even what the regulatory pathways might be. That is still a very active area of regulatory research. And so I think we will have to look to FDA and see what they come out with. And it's likely not going to be CDRH, but maybe other groups in FDA, CDER or CBER, that may put out some guidance documents in these directions. And I guess we have to keep our eyes open for that. But I am definitely not aware of anything that can extend IP protection or reduce timeframes. So it's something that we have to, from my side, I think it's something we have to keep our eyes on and see where the market takes us. Stefan and Alessandro, do you guys have any additional thoughts to add to that?
I agree with what you just said. So, and yeah, normally the 20 years, as you mentioned, it should be a 3-year 510K is not a standard, I would say. Normally we try to be faster, and so you still have some time of protection. And then it's obviously also around it a bit what you actually protect. So we often protect our printing process, the hardware. If we develop something new on the printing process, put some protection on that as well. So it's not only always covering just the device itself, but also process, hardware, which then evolves, you can protect again. So yeah, I've not seen big issues with that so far, but yeah, that's just my experience.
Thanks very much.
Any other questions? Oh, there is another one. This one is for Alessandro specifically. Do you see 3D bioprinting being used to make parts for the cell therapy space? For example, as matrices to expand patient cells? This is from Atul.
It's something I think is possible. It's something that we are taking in consideration. Still, we're not working on it. Indeed, just for your knowledge, we are located in north of Spain, Basque Country, and there is a big partner, Vive Biotech, that just work in cell and gene therapies. And it's something that still we are at the beginning, but we are exploring. Yes, yeah. So bioprinting is not only for in vitro model or for regenerative implants, but can generate reagents that can be used or from academia or from biomanufacturing. Yeah. But it's also very important standardization. So, and scaling up. So yeah.
Thank you for your insights, Alessandro. Let's see if there's any more coming through.
And so maybe while we wait for any other audience questions, Alessandro had another kind of question for you on the 3D regenerative medicine on your software platform actually. I know very little about 3D bioprinting printers and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about what kinds of printers does your software platform work with? Are there commercially available printers on the market that your software works with? And typically what are kind of like the price points of these, and is it something that a small company can purchase, or do you have to have a large R&D budget to get into this space?
No. So this software is compatible with any bioprinters. So I don't want to mention name now, but the most known bioprinter used in academia. There are several. Also in the academic lab, what we are seeing that there is an interesting, we can call it market, that a lot of researchers develop their own printer.
Yeah.
So it's, the really cost is super competitive, and also from a technological point of view, really interesting, really interesting. So the advantage of the software can be adapted for any kind of specific request. The problem that you cannot survive if you do custom project for is too demanding. So software can be used in any kind of printers, from the most common, most famous to the less one, and is a subscription. It's a simple subscription. Obviously, we provide a basic pack, and we have several additional models. According with the additional models, change a bit the price. But as I think is very important, so always speaking about academia, the most important thing, in my opinion, now is standardize 3D bioprinting academic sector. And so as much as possible, we try to support, we launched this program, MacBio Research Program, where we give the subscription for 1 year, but for the entire year, we have free access to development of AI models or just advanced models for your requirement. So for this, a lot of researchers come to us and say, yes, I'm working with spheroids for this. I'm working with cornea. I'm working with endometrial tissue engineering. And so at the end, the geometry more or less are similar. The next step that I think is very interesting from a scientific point of view and from a technological is as soon as we standardize the scaffold, the architecture, we are able to reduce the times of printing. So how many times I print something to have a scaffold that I'm looking for, and I understand the evolution of this printed scaffold. Next step is, okay, and now I have to understand how the cells behave internal the scaffold. Because really, sometimes you inject the cells, stem cell in one area, and after another area, you're completely different. Some become liver cells, one example, and another, if you inject another part, you cancer cell. Depends on. Yeah, it's very generalistic. So cellular behavior, I think, is from a biological perspective, I think what I'm seeing. And
very amazing, very amazing.
All right, so we do have time for a couple more questions. If anyone wants to put any in the chat box. I think we just got one more. All right, this one is from Charles. Is bioprinting used in cultured meat? Very good question. I can actually answer this. Yes, it is. It's becoming more popular now. It's more of a regulatory thing. It's up to the states. Certain states like Florida, for example, are banning public use of those meats. But it is being used in research. It does tend to be very expensive. Some being thousands of dollars up to $1 million, just to produce that small tissue sample of beef. So You're welcome. This one is from Nathan. Do you find the possibility of using bioprinting for bone structures? Could you elaborate a little bit more? We are definitely doing research in it. I've personally done it at the University of Massachusetts in Lowell. More on the bioink side of things, I've done it with eggshell nanoparticle reinforced structures for blast wound injuries. Could you clarify your question a little bit more? Because that's very broad. Actually, Nathan, I'm going to unmute you.
Hi, the question is basically to understand, to use bioprinting in terms of using materials that are more adaptive to the body than using mostly like organic plastics or something similar to that can actually replicate the actual bonds. And will that survive in the body? Will the body accept such elements? That's the broad question. Yeah.
Stefan, I'm going to address this one to you because you've worked more with implants.
Sure, yeah. So if I understood the question correctly, it's if we can use bioprinting for implants that replace bone. Is that correct? Or
Yeah,
Yes,
I
yes.
think, I think also the question was around essentially maybe not using plastics, but actually using bone material,
Okay.
things that will osseointegrate better and so forth, perhaps.
Yeah. Tricky question. So what we see, where we see some development, is actually to combine bioresorbable constructs and then use biologics to fill that constructs to replace bone. That's what we are right now seeing in some developments to target medium to large scale bone defects. So I would say there's some movement. Directly printing with biologics, at least we are not in that space yet. I'm not sure if Alessandro has seen something in that area. But our approach would be right now print bioresorbable constructs, use biologics to fill a bone gap or something like that.
Thank you, Stefan. We do have time for a couple more. All right, doesn't look like there's any other questions from the audience. So with that being said, thank you so much. We're coming up to the end of our time here. It's been great. And thank you, Alessandro and Stefan, once again. And thank you to our audience for the amazing questions. If we didn't answer any questions, we will try to respond later. If you wanted to email us, you could email us. We have Steph@bostonbiotechadvisors.com and Rakesh@rxdeviceconsulting.com. Alessandro and Stefan, if you wanted to also put your email addresses in the chat box, people could reach out to you as well. Feel free to check out our website, bostonbiotechadvisors.com and rxdeviceconsulting.com. And thank you to our sponsors for this webinar series. We'll be back next month with another webinar on a totally different topic related to healthcare. We're actually going to be discussing the oncology arena. So be on the lookout for that. And don't forget to check out 3D Systems and MacBee.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thanks
joining.
again. It was
All right,
great.
take care.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.